Hi, everybody. I am Rita Morton, the founder of Sacred Sorrows, and I am here today with my very dear friend and fellow grieving mom, Cherra Savage. Cherra, so glad that you are here today.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
It is really going to be great having a conversation with you. You and I have had hundreds of conversations about our journey together as grieving moms, and I'm looking forward to whatever comes forth from our meeting today. So I thought maybe you could tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and how we met, and we can just go from there.
Okay, my name is Cherra, and I started this grief journey about 5 years ago in 2019 when my son Garrett Savage passed away at the age of 24, and then decided that it was going to be it was going to be a necessity for me to join some kind of a support group. And I tried several support groups on for size. Not all of them were working for me. And I ended up going to one in Paradise Valley in Arizona. And that's where we met. And that's where our journey together at least began.
Yeah.
So,
I remember that night really well. I wasn't super comfortable in that group, although there were many things about that I got healing from. But the best part of that group for me was the night that I met you. I just think that we hit it off right away. You and I are so different, and I love that we have really honored our differences during this past almost 5 years as friends. And I think that's kind of the situation with all grieving moms, like what puts us here is one thing and one thing only, and that is that we have lost our children or our grandchildren. And yet, that shared loss, although the stories are so different, the shared loss has thrown us together. And then we make this connection that you'll be my friend forever, Chera.
absolutely. Definitely. Under terrible circumstances, but nonetheless, a friendship I feel that was really meant to be.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that we both kind of had that mutual recognition at that time. Because though we both walked away from that particular support group, here we are 5 years later.
No, right, right. So one of the things that our viewers don't know yet about Sacred Sorrows is that our model is such that we don't get together and talk about the causes of death of our children. And I want to let people know a little bit more about why we don't. So I guess I'll start. I think one of the first things that hit me when we were at that support group and also at some other support groups that I had gone to was that women were telling the absolute details of very tragic and very painful circumstances. And as much as I am a very caring person, and all the women in the room were very compassionate women, those stories were just triggering and far too heavy for me. I mean, I could barely carry my own grief and my own story. And then to just hear this like heavy pounding in my soul of the other stories was not serving me. So that was part of the reason why I decided Sacred Sorrows was not going to do that, even though our stories are super important. That was my number one reason why I didn't want to go down that path. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that at first I didn't see that it was a big deal, that people want to share. I think that there's probably some really good psychological reasons for people wanting to share that information. Um, However, I agree with you. Over time, I've really learned to embrace that as a practice for Sacred Sorrows because that's not what we're here for. We're not here to focus on that terrible event. We're here to focus on each other, supporting one another in fellowship, in in finding healing through the mystery of grace. And and all I can really say about that is it's good advice to people who are trying to support the grieving mothers, newly grieving mothers, because we also invite friends of the grieving into the support group. Um, that that it's not necessary for you to ask that question. Focus in on the person um, who is experiencing the loss.
Yeah. I often liken it to well gosh, do you remember the party, Chera? The party that you and I and another grieving mom were at not that long ago. And we were sitting there just at a party. Like we were not in any space to be drilled about our stories. And so when a woman who asked us point blank as we're sitting there at a picnic table about to have a barbecue dinner, how did your child die? I think we were just in shock about that because what I wanted to say and didn't was how about think of the absolute worst thing that could have ever happened or that did happen to you in your own life. I want you to think about the worst thing that ever happened. And now tell me about it. And that is what you people do to a grieving mom when they ask them how did their child die.
Absolutely. And I'd actually read some research on this. I'm just to bring in a little, you know me, I've got to bring in a little research. Um, is
Yeah.
that that people ask that question because it gives them a little rush of endorphins.
Mhm.
That they ask that question. It's completely unconscious that they're doing it, but they're doing it for themselves. They're not doing it for the person. So, you know, please keep in mind uh, when and if you have to support somebody who is going through this kind of a tragedy to not ask that question. If they want to share it, they will.
Right.
So
Right. And I want to encourage the grieving moms that are listening that you are not obligated in any way, shape, or form to answer that question. So if someone who is well meaning, but maybe also far too curious for their own good and being more concerned about getting that answer more than thinking about what it may do to you. And I don't mean that in a harsh way, just sometimes there are all kinds of people. Most people are really well meaning, but you don't have to answer that question. You can say, you know what, now is not really the time for me, or I'd rather not talk about that. If people get insistent, you're allowed to say, that's really none of your business. So I just want to let you know the whole range of responses you're allowed to say. You don't have to be polite if you're getting grilled in a way that, really makes you feel uncomfortable.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So let's talk about the mystery, Chera. Tell me a little bit about the word that I said that I don't even remember saying to you and how much that impacted you on our journey together and the journey with Sacred Sorrows.
It's funny because I was just recently writing about the mystery, and and remembering that time that we when we met each other, where it really clicked with me that this relationship was going to go a little farther than just um, you know um, a temporary support group while I was going through intense grief. Um, we were leaving the meeting that night, and on the way out to our cars, we were just I guess just bantering back and forth. And um, you said something, and I can't remember exactly how you put it, but you said that healing would occur within the framework of the mystery. And then it was, oh, okay, and goodbye. And got in my car and I just sat there and I was just like, what just happened? That it was like a code word to awaken something, really ancient and meaningful within myself. And I all the way home, the entire drive, I was thinking the mystery, the mystery. This has a really deep meaning. Um and um and with it, grace, Um, now, the thing about mystery is that all of us have grown up with this word our whole life, but it's just another word that really doesn't gain the wisdom that I think it should until something really profoundly life altering happens. So we use the mystery in our group in a way that has deep spiritual meaning, and um, and that's going to vary, I guess, probably from woman to woman. Um, but it's like an alchemy that brings together faith and hope,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
what we really nurture.
Yeah. And what I really love about the concept of grace and the mystery is that it meets every single woman that comes to Sacred Sorrows exactly where they are. So, you know, Sacred Sorrows does draw, I would say, women who come mostly from a Christian faith tradition. But women from all faith traditions are welcome to Sacred Sorrows. And we never exclude anyone who is practicing or not practicing in a type of, traditional faith tradition. But, the majority of our gals have, been grounded in like one of the traditional faith traditions and particularly Christianity. And so this concept of the mystery of grace really encompasses all of that, but makes room for women who, have not so much of the traditional practice in their life at the moment, or an expectation that they ever will. So I think that everyone can really relate to mystery, to ritual, to practices that really are embodied. Like at Sacred Sorrows, we light a candle for our children at basically every single event that we do, and that candle is so powerfully meaningful. And on our retreats, we talk a lot about the fact that our children are in the arms of perfect love and perfect light. And that's kind of, I think, what we talk about when we say the mystery. We're not talking about anything that's scary or woo woo. We're talking about truth. And the arms of perfect love and perfect light are the arms of God. And so I think that it really using that term of grace and mystery really welcomes in every woman wherever she is, whether she's angry with God or doesn't really think that God didn't deliver. God didn't deliver, like we had our children, and some women really think that they were taken. And, one side view I want to sidebar is like our children weren't taken by God, they were received by God. But, you know, you were about to say something about meeting women where they are. So I'm just going to let you take it from there.
Well, let me just like segue, like sidestep that
Mhm.
for a minute, because as you were talking, what I started to think about is that it mystery is, I mean, it's about the mystical, and it's not that it has to be woo woo. It's just that it's something we can understand as we are here living out our lives, on the day to day things of oil changes and paying bills and all of the millions of things we still have to do,
Mhm.
but yet there's this piece of us that's still very much grounded within the mystery and the mystical. I mean, and it doesn't have to be something that's scary. It can be something that's really magical.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I wanted to say is for women who may not be, grounded in the Christian faith, you could take the word God and replace it with love,
Mhm.
and that would work, for you within this context, and you would still be welcome and fit right into the Sacred Stars community.
Yes.
So
Yeah. And thank you for saying that because, women's lives have changed. Speaking of lives changing, how did the journey you and I really were together from the beginning of Sacred Sorrows? Because you knew me before it was an idea, and I really feel very much like we're in this together. You've been a huge part of the foundation of building Sacred Sorrows. Couldn't do it without you for sure. And I know that the spiritual journey for both of us, like both of us, are not the same people we were 5 years ago. Thank, thank goodness, right? Those was really rough times. But how, tell me a little about, how you've changed or how you've got some different spiritual expression now. I don't want to use the word progress, but because there's aren't levels, but your expression is different now, right?
It is a little different. I strangely, I think I became um, a little bit more open to what is traditional, um, while at the same time still embracing what is universal. I want to say universal, but um, I guess probably what I mean by that is, all inclusive,
Mhm.
of different ideas of, what goodness and love and, in other words, God. And so that I've become more willing to let go of tools that may not have been very useful to me,
Mhm.
and replace it with a stronger. This is so ineffable. It's hard to put words on it.
I want to use the
A
word faith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, my faith has become stronger, um, probably because I'm more where my son is now. It's like I'm here, but I'm also where he is. So and for all the things that we do to keep that alive in Sacred Sorrows, because this isn't a one and done type um, of what's the word, support group. It's an ongoing relationship that's growing and growing and growing with our community. Of women that are in California, Washington, um, uh, Arizona, obviously, but where else? I mean, we're from all
New
over the place.
York, yeah, New York, and Northern California, Southern California now. So, and
Yeah,
everyone that's watching right now that we haven't met, we hope that we meet you on a retreat.
absolutely.
Um, yeah, so practically you were kind enough to let me drag you up to Los Altos, California to come on a retreat. and and boy, first retreat you've ever been on that was anything like that. So maybe tell us a little about that experience.
Oh, those retreats. So I guess probably the way that I would look at the retreats, um, there's the first retreat where you go and you're new to the whole idea of Sacred Sorrows and what it's about, and that can be really scary. And then you get there, and what you find is like a sense of like a great big hug, because you've got all of these women who are there feeling the exact same way. And what you created, Rita, with Sacred Sorrows is structure, a framework, a place to be able to express your grieving within the bounds of creativity and ritual, um, which helps to not make it so well chaotic, because chaotic is makes it scary,
Right.
and then the follow-up retreats that we go to, what that does is it solidifies our fellowship. And I keep saying the word fellowship, but we need this in order to continue our lives. And every woman that we see again, it's big smiles and warm hugs, and so happy to see each other. And it's new material every time in on the grounds of Los Altos, which are permeated with a sense of faith and hope and love. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I receive all of that. Talk about chaos, right? Okay, we talk about that a lot, you and I, and other grieving moms that are in our leadership team. And um, I never realized, Chera, how much this organization was going to be founded and grounded in chaos. And my spiritual director, who is one of the Jesuits up at the Jesuit Retreat Center in Los Altos, he told me that what I was trying to do was to tame chaos and that it is impossible to tame chaos. And I prayed with that. I thought a lot about that, not overnight, like over a period of months, right? And I finally came to the realization that the chaos is where the healing happens. And that has so much to do with your word that you said earlier, which is alchemy. It's just that within that stirring of our chaos, the fact that sometimes we, and I mean it for me because I'm also a grieving mom, are confused, are disassociated, don't know what we're doing from one minute to the next, sometimes can't choose our words, find ourselves stuttering. I feel like I can liken it to a concussion, what a concussion feels like grief concussed us. Um, and I thought I was starting an organization that would be, yes, you said structure. It's a miracle that there is structure within it, around it, but there is, and yet the chaos is wild. I mean, women will be on retreat, and we specifically on your retreat, which was our first retreat, we had gals who literally like sat down to someone else's lunch on Saturday and like ate each other's food and didn't even know it until halfway through. One of our gals I remember said like, "Oh, this tofu is really good. I didn't know I got tofu." It was like, oh my gosh, what are
Yeah.
we doing? And um, at another recent retreat in Tucson, a couple of gals left our meeting room and they had each other's shoes on. And it is how we roll. It is how we roll. So if anyone is worried about coming on a retreat like you, and you'll fit right into our style of chaos that brings miraculous healing.
It
So
is.
yeah.
It definitely. I mean, was it C.S. Lewis that said that grief can feel a lot like fear,
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
so just don't confuse your grieving with being fearful, because it's it's 100% worth it to go, and at the very least put your toe in the water, because
Yeah.
having a community um, who understands you when you've lost a child, it it means the world.
Yes.
So
Yeah. There are a lot of things that I want to talk to you about in the future that are topics that we can touch on. So I know that this isn't going to be our last conversation with Shira and Rita on YouTube. But I want to just touch on some of those. And I think I'm going to make a list because there are things that, we have talked about over and over and over again that I think would help the grieving moms that are watching this to know that we're not, uh, that we're not all about the mystery. Like there is this peppering of the fact that you have to figure out, like, I lost my child and now I'm left with all of this, and how the hell am I going to do this? So some of the things that are really strong that we need to look at are number one, regret.
yeah.
I mean, we all deal with regret. We sometimes let it pound us and beat us down, and we're already on the ground about our loss, and then like this voice of regret comes and just wants to annihilate us. And I just want to say that there's healing there regarding regret. Do you want to throw in anything about that?
Yeah, regret does rear its ugly head, and it's not something that just happens once. It's something that um, I think that we're given the tools to address through our fellowship, because talking to other mothers who are also going through it, you can see that it's a common thread and something that comes up again and again. And it's incredibly self-defeating, and there's no purpose. Um, with that said, though, you can't judge yourself for having regret come up. Everybody does. Um, but it lessens the burden, I think, to have other people to talk about it with.
Yeah. And, we'll be talking more about that in another meeting. And maybe, we'll do an online mini retreat, about regret. And we'll be able to wrap some structure around the chaos of that, as you said. Another topic that I think is really something that moms are looking for is the complications of our remaining or our continuing surviving relationships, specifically with children, our living children. You and I have talked about that a lot. So if you want to just touch on that, I think that would be great.
Yeah, I would love to. It's really critical that even at the moment of the worst thing that could possibly happen to you, that you remember that you have a surviving child, who you don't want to burden with survivor's guilt. You're a mother, or a grandmother who loves the surviving child. Don't forget to tell them. Don't forget to demonstrate it.
Yeah.
They are as every bit as important as the person, the child that you lost. It can be devastating to your relationship and to them and their future, to not let them know that they're loved and valued.
Right.
So,
Right. And also to, not have every conversation be about and there's your dog. So you want to mute yourself, go right ahead.
sorry.
That's okay. Totally. But I was going to say is, I also had to work really hard and still work really hard on not talking about Chad, the son that I lost, to my surviving son. I mean, he didn't lose a child, he lost a brother, and it's not the same kind of loss. And my surviving son's name is Nick, and he has a beautiful full life, and I have the desire to want to encourage that and cheer that and have our time together be about him. As mom, it's hard. The dynamics of our family changed second that Chad died. We were not the same family, and it's been 5 years, and I still have a heart for wanting this new relationship of ours to become whatever it's supposed to be. And it can't just happen. It's in the becoming now, right? So
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a heavy one.
Right. Okay, anniversaries. Like, we need to probably have talk about these recognition of our children's births and deaths, and how challenging and tricky and hard and surprising. And you say some more adjectives, please.
I guess surprising, and maybe sneaky, because you're still out there trying to live your life. And about, a month before, all of a sudden you'd be like having all these symptoms, and you're just like, what's going on with me? And I mean, you and I've had this conversation many times. I'm like, I don't know what's going on with me right now. And you're like, oh, well, what date is it? What's coming up? And it's just like, oh yeah, because even though you may not have that at the forefront of your thinking, it's still very much alive in your heart, and your body is remembering it, and it is a trauma, that that a lot of us have had to have treatment for, And treatment is probably beyond, our fellowship, beyond the support that we receive um, in our support groups. Professional help is a good way. It's a good idea to seek.
Yes.
So
Thank you for bringing that up because, we Sacred Sorrows offers something that's very different and unique than other support groups. I mean, we talk about spirituality. We definitely, are focused on the fact that our children are in the arms of love and light, and that working on our spiritual journey gets us closer to them and gets us closer to God, and it's all bundled up together. And so we are really focused on hope. But that said, we're not ignoring the psychological and practical pieces of this. So if you are a newly grieving mom and you are not in any kind of grief counseling, like please get into some grief counseling. Take care of yourself. There are so many tools and so much healing to be had by walking in this world of grief counseling and EMDR, which is a fantastic treatment for trauma. And if your child or grandchild has died by any type of sudden loss, make no mistake, you are experiencing trauma, probably also complicated grief. And then, even if it hasn't been a sudden loss, it certainly is traumatic. So, grief counseling is really important. All of the gamut of self care is super important. There are gals that come to Sacred Sorrows. And now, on the other hand, if you are a woman that has experienced your loss like years ago, or even many years ago, many of the women that come to Sacred Sorrows realize or find that there was a piece of their healing journey that was missing. And they find those pieces and put the puzzle together here at Sacred Sorrows.
absolutely, especially when you have people you can talk to. We're a different group of people that feel misunderstood by the general population, and that's the whole purpose of support is finding people who are like you. It's a different kind of tribe.
Uh, yeah, messy, a messy kind
Yes.
of tribe, but a loving, healing kind of tribe. So there are more conversations to come. You're going to hear more from Cherra, and I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for being
Thank
here
you.
today. Um, there is a website called sacredsorrows.org, and there are a lot of blog articles on that site that will go deeper in so many of these topics that we brought up today. Also, on that website, you will find out about our upcoming events. So, our online retreats and our in-person retreats and our in-person afternoons of reflection. Those are all listed on our website. So please check that out and subscribe to this channel, and also join the mailing list of our website. So we hope that we see you again. And Cherra, I'm so blessed that you spent this time with me together.
Thank
And
you for having me on. I really appreciate being here.
yeah, I appreciate you. So we'll see you soon. And I'm going to stop recording, and thank you so very much.